Hey everybody, we made it to season 23, which has no theme, so it's kind of a free-for-all. So hit like, subscribe, leave a comment, do whatever you want, just be safe. On Wednesday, April 22nd, 2020, Myra Guillen was worried about her sister after not having been able to reach her all day. Her younger sister, Vanessa, was the type to be in constant contact with her family, usually sending text messages on her breaks or after her shift at work. That day had been different, though. She had not made contact all day, and the texts from Myra and her mother, Gloria, went unanswered. They had a reason to worry, though, as Vanessa had been planning to confront the person she said had been sexually harassing her. It was no coincidence that she was missing, and her family was determined to find her. This is Monsters. Before we begin, I just want to make sure you know that my other show, Sinister, is back up and there are 3 episodes a week. They're dark stories from history, and if you like this show, you'll probably like that one. Give it a shot. There are links in the description. Thanks. Vanessa Guillen was born on September 30th, 1999 in Houston, Texas, the second of 6 children. Her parents, Rogelio and Gloria, had moved to the U.S. from a small farming community in Mexico. Vanessa was extremely smart, testing into the gifted program at Cesar Chavez High School. There she took advanced placement classes and was a star athlete in track and field and on the soccer team. She was committed to fitness and would describe herself as a gymholic. Her strong sense of commitment led her on a path to join the U.S. Army once she graduated from high school. She spoke of wanting to give back to the country that had offered her family so many opportunities. It was barely a week after she had received her diploma that Vanessa was on her way to basic training in Fort Jackson in South Carolina. From there, she went on to Fort Lee, now called Fort Gregg Adams in Virginia, to learn her specialty in small arms and towed artillery repair. Those skills would make her an armorer wherever she was eventually stationed. By the time she was finished with training, she was a private first class, and she was lucky enough to be stationed at Fort Hood just a few hours from her hometown. As Vanessa settled into her new life on the base, she made friends and regularly visited her family. Her fellow soldiers noted that she kept the armory impeccable and that the weapons were always in perfect working order. That was likely why she soon received a promotion to the rank of specialist. She had been dating a man named Juan Cruz for a couple of years, and in March of 2020, he proposed to Vanessa and she said yes. What should have been the happiest time in Vanessa's life slowly turned sour, and her family members noticed something different about her. During one of Vanessa's visits, Gloria finally got her daughter to open up and tell her what was wrong. Vanessa explained that a sergeant on the base had been sexually harassing her. She said she hadn't reported it because it either wouldn't be taken seriously or worse, she would be the victim of retaliation. Gloria did not have legal immigration status at that time, and Vanessa was worried that someone could use that against her. Gloria was ready to call the base herself, but Vanessa assured her she would take care of it herself. On April 22, 2020, Vanessa's mother, Gloria, and her sister, Myra, had been waiting for some contact from her all day. Vanessa not calling or texting throughout the day was very unusual, and when evening hit with no communication from her, Myra decided to make the 3-hour drive to Fort Hood. With Gloria in the passenger seat, the 2 women arrived at the base around midnight, and when they were stopped by soldiers at the gate, they explained the situation. They were escorted to an office where a captain explained that she had not shown back up for work after lunch and that they were in the process of looking for her. He explained that they had found no signs of foul play. It turned out that Vanessa had arrived at work at the armory that morning, just like every other morning, and at some point she had left. A colleague had texted Vanessa at 11:05 a.m. to ask her when she was going to be back in the armory, but she didn't respond. Vanessa's car keys, ID, bank card, and keys to her room in the barracks were inside the armory, so the colleague ended up locking the armory with her belongings still inside. A witness said that Vanessa had left her armory and went to another armory to compare serial numbers on weapons. That armory was run by a soldier named Specialist Aaron Robinson, and other witnesses say they saw Robinson leaving his armory with a large wheeled tough box and that it appeared to be very heavy. Gloria and Myra didn't get any answers from the captain, and they would later say that they felt like the situation wasn't being taken seriously. It's very likely that the Army command assumed that she had just taken off, which definitely happens, but it was pretty clear that Vanessa wasn't that kind of soldier. Vanessa's family weren't the only people growing concerned, though. Other soldiers had been trying to get a hold of her, and the lack of response was making them worry. An initial search party of 6 soldiers combed the base from 10:15 p.m. until about 2:25 a.m. The search effort resumed at 6:30 a.m. on April 23rd, with senior leadership becoming directly involved by 7:30 a.m. after it became clear that Vanessa was not going to report to work that day. Vanessa was officially reported missing on April 23rd, but the Army kept the situation fairly quiet. Normally, when someone goes missing, there would be information everywhere, but the command didn't make any announcements. They didn't post any bulletins, and there were no press releases. Within the base itself, they completed a thorough inspection of all barracks, armories, motor pools, and unit areas, but during the first 48 hours, the Army kept the investigation pretty quiet. The first 24 hours in a missing persons case is the most critical, so waiting another 24 hours on top of that was a huge failure on the part of Fort Hood's command. On April 24th, the Army Criminal Investigation Division, or CID, published a news release seeking public assistance. The search eventually expanded beyond the base, involving multiple agencies including the Texas Rangers, FBI, and local police departments. A $15,000 reward was offered for information leading to Vanessa's whereabouts. That reward would increase to $50,000 in June. No trace of Vanessa had been found, and worse, the Army wasn't really keeping her family in the loop. On June 13th, hundreds of protesters gathered at the gates of Fort Hood. While fighting for answers about her missing daughter, Gloria was arrested for illegal immigration, but was released, and Congresswoman Sylvia Garcia and an immigration attorney helped her with her immigration status. On June 30th, 2020, building contractors were working in Belton, Texas, about 20 miles or 32 kilometers from Fort Hood when they discovered human remains near the Leon River. Sheriff's deputies arrived first, followed by Texas Rangers, and eventually CID at Fort Hood was notified. The remains were burned and mutilated before being partially buried in a shallow grave. Then someone had poured some concrete over the remains in a failed attempt to conceal them. Once the remains were confirmed to belong to Vanessa, the process of trying to figure out what had happened to her began. Specialist Aaron Robinson had been the last person known to have seen her, and he had already become a person of interest. He had been questioned when Vanessa went missing, and he explained that she had finished her work and left his armory, and that he didn't know where she had gone after that. As time went on, investigators started looking deeper into Aaron's life, and when they got his cell phone records, they noted that, at 2 a.m. on April 23rd, his phone had pinged off of a cell tower near a bridge that went over the Leon River, and he was there for 2 hours. Coincidence? Not a chance. Because of that pinged location, a burn site nearby had been searched 10 days earlier, where a scorched lid to a tough box matching the one Aaron Robinson had been wheeling was found. Authorities had searched the area where Vanessa's remains were found at that time, but didn't see the body. Fort Hood CID detained Aaron and confined him to a room, but he wasn't officially under arrest. The other thing investigators had found in his phone records were multiple calls to his girlfriend, Cecily Aguilar, on the night Vanessa went missing. When she was initially questioned, she told investigators that Aaron had called multiple times because she had lost her phone and he was helping her look for it. But they knew that was bullshit because the calls had been answered and went on for a while. The same day the remains were found, Cecily was interviewed again where she broke down and confessed the truth. She explained that Aaron had told her he bludgeoned Vanessa to death with a hammer in his armory and then stuffed her body into the tough box. She went with him to the dump site where they first tried to burn the body, but the fire wasn't big enough. After that, they dismembered her body with an axe and a machete and buried it in a shallow grave. They worried that the remains wouldn't stay hidden, so they returned 2 days later and poured concrete over it. Authorities convinced Cecily to call Aaron while they recorded the call. He talked to her about the discovery of the remains and even texted her a few news articles about it. Not long after that, Aaron started getting nervous and managed to flee the room where he was being detained. An alert was put out and a manhunt began to find the suspect. It didn't take them long to find him, though, as they were able to track his cell phone. When they showed up to the house off base in the neighboring city of Killeen just after midnight on July 1st, there was a brief moment of tension with a standoff between the police and the armed suspect. The situation ended suddenly when Aaron turned the gun on himself and took his own life. Aaron Robinson would not be held accountable for his crimes, and worse, he would not be able to offer an explanation as to why he had killed Vanessa. Cecily told authorities that, while Vanessa was in Aaron's armory, she had seen his cell phone lock screen, which was an image of Cecily. Aaron was worried that he would be punished for violating the Army's fraternization rules since Cecily was actually still married to another Army soldier who was stationed at Fort Hood. Because of that, he beat Vanessa to death with a hammer. What the actual fuck? There's a lot to unpack here. First, if you're worried about something like that, why would you have a picture of someone you aren't supposed to be dating on your phone? Now, let's say you've ignored that simple piece of common sense and someone sees the picture. You could simply talk to them about it. Let them know that the person you're dating and their spouse are separated, possibly getting a divorce. Because that was the case with Cecily and her husband. She was living off base with Aaron at the time. But at the end of the day, none of that matters because dating another soldier's spouse is not what the Army's fraternization rules are about. The Army's fraternization rules, AR 600-20, are about relationships between soldiers of different ranks. You can't date someone who is a supervising rank or someone who you supervise. There is absolutely nothing in AR 600-20 about dating the spouse of another soldier. The most recent update to AR 600-20 was in July of 2020, and though that update wouldn't have affected Aaron Robinson, there was still nothing added about dating the spouse of another soldier. Is it frowned upon? Sure, but you aren't going to have any serious action taken against you. So was that really why he killed her and her death was just that much more tragic? Or was something else going on? Vanessa had claimed that she was being sexually harassed by a sergeant, which wouldn't have been Aaron because he was a specialist. But maybe he knew the sergeant and he found out she was going to report him. Officials from the Army state that no sexual harassment had taken place, but how would they know that? If she hadn't reported it and she never named the sergeant to her family, what did investigators have to go on to determine no sexual harassment had taken place? Did they ask every sergeant on the base, "Hey, did you sexually harass Specialist Vanessa Guillen?" and just take everyone at their word? It's not like the U.S. military hasn't had a history of denying sexual harassment was happening within its ranks. In 1999, Maricela Guzman, still in Navy boot camp, was on night watch duty when she was grabbed and dragged into a dark stairwell and sexually assaulted by a superior. When she attempted to report the assault, she was repeatedly reprimanded for not having requested to talk to the drill sergeant properly and was made to do multiple sets of push-ups before she could even tell her story. She gave up and remained silent for the rest of her time in the service. She went on to found SWAN, the Service Women's Action Network. Kate Weber was sexually assaulted by a superior in 1996 while stationed in Germany for the Army. She would later say, quote, "I first tried reporting the rape to my staff sergeant. He told me to be quiet and not tell anyone. So then I tried to tell a woman sergeant who was beneath him because I thought she'd be more sympathetic. She just cursed me for jumping the chain of command and not coming to her first. I went to the doctor who did at least make a record of it, but he did nothing. I also told my battle buddy, a fellow female soldier. She said, 'I know that guy. He's married and he would never do such a thing. You're a liar and a slut.' Before long, I was being called a whore and a bitch by everyone. The guys were warning each other, 'This one will accuse you of rape, so stay away from her.' I was 18 years old and it was the first time I had ever been away from home. I had no idea what to do." It isn't just women who have had their sexual assaults ignored by military personnel. Rick Tringale was in Army basic training in 1986 when he was beaten and raped by a group of other soldiers in his barracks. He went to the doctor the following day since he had severe injuries and said the doctor was initially sympathetic, but soon the phone rang. He explained, quote, "The doctor was talking to someone and looking at me. Then, when he came off the phone, he said, 'You're a phony. Your company says you shouldn't be here and you're fine.' He sent me away. I became a different person after that. Everybody in the squad platoon knew what had happened. There was no way anyone could have missed it." Though military officials were surely aware of the problem, it continued happening. In 2005, Corey Choka was serving in the Coast Guard when she was beaten and sexually assaulted by a supervisor. During the attack, she suffered a dislocated jaw which caused lasting pain. That was because her attacker was never held responsible for his crime, and the Department of Veterans Affairs denied her claim when she requested surgery to have the damage to her jaw fixed. She would later equate reporting the attack to poking a beehive. She said she felt like she was getting stung from all sides. Her attacker had a reputation for threatening anyone who reported him. He would threaten to kill their families, and it got to the point where everyone was too afraid of him to act. As of 2012, she said he was still in the military. In 2011, Corey and 27 other former military personnel filed a lawsuit against the Department of Defense and then Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld. They claimed their constitutional rights had been violated when the defendant failed to 1. Investigate rapes and sexual assaults, 2. Prosecute perpetrators, 3. Provide an adequate judicial system as required by the Uniform Military Justice Act, and 4. Abide by congressional deadlines to implement congressionally ordered institutional reforms to stop rapes and other sexual assaults. It didn't take long for the judge to grant the defense's motion to dismiss the case. The United States military has gotten itself into a very good position to not ever be held accountable for their wrongdoings when it comes to active duty or former military personnel. In 2013, 2 male officers were convicted of sexual assault but later given clemency by Lieutenant Generals Craig Franklin and Susan Helms. A 2011 investigation found that women in the U.S. military were more likely to be sexually assaulted by a fellow soldier than to be killed in action. A 2015 investigation found that sexual assault claims had increased since 2009. It found that only 3% of victims made a formal report of the assault and that 50% of the victims who don't only remain silent for fear of retaliation if they had filed a report. Despite military officials claiming they would be making changes to combat sexual assault in recent years, the cases continue to happen. On August 18, 2020, just 4 months after Vanessa Guillen's disappearance, Sergeant Elder Fernandez went missing, also from Fort Hood. The prior week he had reported that he had been sexually assaulted by a supervisor. The investigators said that afterward, despite having been transferred to another unit, he was still being hazed by his attacker and others for filing the report. His body was later found hanging in a tree, and it was stated that there was no sign of foul play, i.e. suicide. But that seems to be a common claim from the military anytime one of their soldiers turns up dead. In 2023, another young woman died after telling her family she was being sexually harassed, and the worst part was that she was also serving at Fort Hood, which by then had been renamed Fort Cavazos. They claimed the name change was to honor the first Hispanic four-star general in Army history, but they might have also wanted to distance themselves from the fact that Fort Hood had become known as the base where people kept disappearing or dying. Private Ana Boswalda Ruiz was found dead on base on March 13, 2023. The base CID wouldn't disclose a cause of death, but said there was no signs of foul play and denied any sexual assault happened. Does this sound familiar? Her family stated that she had told them about sexual assault happening from a team leader in her unit. She had told friends about the incident and had written about it in her journal. She had started making a complaint about her team leader, but he was promoted and transferred to another unit, and the report wasn't completed. She had also failed a drug test indicating that she had THC in her system and was told by a supervisor that he could make the negative results go away if she slept with him. At the least, it seems that Anna may have taken her own life due to the ongoing harassment she was suffering, but her family believes she was killed and it was made to look like a suicide, something that may have also happened to Sergeant Elder Fernandez. In 2020, Cecily Aguilar was charged with 1 count of conspiracy to tamper with evidence and 3 counts of making a false statement. She pleaded guilty to all counts and was sentenced to 30 years in federal prison. The case placed a spotlight on sexual assault in the military, and the Guillen family has been a major part of the fight to reform sexual assault reporting for military personnel. Vanessa's mother, Gloria, said that she was told by witnesses that they heard gunshots at the time of Vanessa's death, and Gloria believes she was executed as part of a cover-up by senior members of the military. That may be a little far-fetched, but it is important to implement a system where military personnel can report harassment by other personnel, especially people in positions of authority, without the fear of retaliation. Even if retaliation isn't execution, people are less likely to report a violation if they know they'll be harassed or even punished for making the report. In July of 2020, the Secretary of the Army ordered a full investigation into Vanessa Guillen's case. Later that year, 14 Army personnel who were in command positions at Fort Hood were either fired or suspended. The investigation found that there was a, quote, permissive environment for sexual assault and sexual harassment at Fort Hood. On June 1, 2021, Texas Governor Greg Abbott signed into law what is known as the Vanessa Guillen Act. It set up procedures so that military service members can report sexual harassment or assault by other members outside of the chain of command to protect their safety and avoid retaliation. In December of 2021, President Joe Biden signed the National Defense Authority Act, which changed investigations into allegations of sexual assault and harassment to have them done by someone outside of the victim's chain of command. The question remains, is any of that really helping? In 2024, there were 8,195 sexual assaults reported in the U.S. military. That's a 1% decrease from 2023, but a recent study from Brown University revealed that there are likely 2 to 4 times more sexual assault cases in the U.S. military than what the Department of Defense has been reporting. So, the DoD has been underreporting sexual assault cases in the military? Shocking. In 2022, the Guillen family filed a $35 million lawsuit against the United States Army for the sexual assault and wrongful death of Vanessa. The case is still ongoing. Unfortunately, the question of why Aaron Robinson murdered Vanessa Guillen will never be known. Aaron took that information with him when he killed himself. Despite facing numerous obstacles and setbacks, Vanessa Guillen's family continues to fight for justice while advocating for changes within the military to prevent future tragedies like hers from happening again. The identification of suspects connected to her murder highlighted issues of abuse of power and misconduct within its ranks, prompting calls for transparency and accountability moving forward. Justice for Vanessa Guillen is not just about seeking punishment for those involved in her murder, but also about bringing awareness to systematic issues within the military that need to be addressed. Her family's unwavering determination serves as a beacon of hope for change and a reminder that no service member should ever have to endure what Vanessa did. As we honor her memory, let's also commit ourselves to creating a safer and more inclusive environment for all who serve our country. Corey Choka regularly speaks out about sexual assault in the U.S. military. You can learn more about this issue by watching the documentary The Invisible War. It's available on Amazon Prime in the U.S. You can also find it on YouTube. Thanks so much for letting me tell you this story. If you're a fan of true crime, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss an episode. You can also hit like or leave a comment. If you'd like to support the show, check out our merchandise at thisismonsters.com. The link is in the description. Thanks again, and be safe.